Is the AI bubble being inflated by a legalized Ponzi scheme? Let's talk about that. So welcome to Dave is Not AI. I'm Dave, AI expert, AI skeptic. Let's get started. So the surge in artificial intelligence has led to an alarming trend in the tech industry. As we've talked about many times in this channel, companies are predominantly engaging in technology to technology deals rather than focusing on the real customer sales. This strategy, while artificially inflating the valuation, is unsustainable as it effectively just shifts resources among companies without generating true market value. So what's going on right now is that we're seeing company-to-company deals between the tech providers out there, the large ones. I'm going to put up a diagram later that shows you the complexity of these things. But billions of dollars are in value, or resources is changing hands. In other words, a AI cloud company is buying chips from NVIDIA, but NVIDIA is buying cloud resources back from the company. OpenAI buying cloud services from Oracle. And all this stuff looks great for the technology companies at the end of the day because it shows them taking billions of dollars of resources into the company. However, when you look at it, it's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I think at the end of the day, there may be something a little fishy going here, but I'm not an investment expert. I'm not a lawyer, but let's go through it. And you can decide if anything nefarious is going on here. So these are known as circular investment deals. OpenAI has been reported to engage in circular financial arrangements where investments are recycled among tech companies, creating inflated revenue figures without genuine sales to end customers. So what is happening is they're buying from other tech players. In other words, exchanging chips for cloud services, those sorts of things. And that is going on their revenue, on their plus side for how much money they're going to be bringing into the company. However, it's really not selling to the true end users of AI. It's not selling to car manufacturers and retail companies and healthcare systems, things like that. It's just tech companies selling to other tech companies. And that's a little suspicious, certainly when it's inflating the valuation, when at the end of the day, they're just moving resources, value from one company to another. So this has been documented in analysis highlighting how financial reports are misleading, due to these practices. And so I'm not the only one calling the shots. There's lots of financial analysts out there that are talking about this, but I am calling it out in terms of, the consumer, people who are, consuming AI, we're in the AI field, things like that. We don't want the bubble to inflate to such an extreme where it's going to have a devastating effect when it corrects. And I think actions like this may just be doing that. So in other words, people are inflating the bubble as much as they can to make all the money they can, to get all the value that they can until there's a correction, which is going to be the bubble bursting, which is certainly something we're going to see if you've been listening to the show. So tech firms focusing on intercompany sales, notably many tech giants, including OpenAI, NVIDIA, and AMD, have entered into large-scale agreements, primarily with one another, such as NVIDIA supplying hardware to OpenAI, rather than selling to enterprise customers, which has greatly diminished the focus on end user sales. So in other words, we're not focused on selling to people who are actually going to use AI as a true functional force multiplier for their business, but just selling to other technology companies that already get AI. In other words, we already know they're all in on AI. And so we want to see sales to end user organizations that are going to use this technology effectively. Projected losses amid massive spending. OpenAI is projecting to incur significant losses, estimated at $8.5 billion for the year, and they have a many billions of dollars agreement with Oracle now, basically to buy cloud services. And this is highlighting the disconnect between spending and actual profitability. So one doesn't equal the other. In other words, if I'm selling to an end user organization, I'm certainly going to consider that as revenue. And if I'm doing that over and above my costs, that's going to be profit. But these deals are kind of strange. So even though they're trying to account them as revenue, in essence, like I mentioned earlier, it's just the circular movement of resources from one thing, or from one place to the other. Again, not an investment professional. not a stock market analyst and definitely not a lawyer, but that seems a little odd to me. And you guys can make your own decisions, but I figured I'd do a show and bring it up and bring it to your attention. So high proportions of companies not seeing returns on AI investments. Surveys indicate that 95% of companies are investing in AI are not realizing the returns. We talked about this before. The majority of people who are working AI projects, 95% according to MIT, aren't getting value back from those projects. And so that hasn't occurred yet. So we have an odd point in history where all these people are using AI, the end user organizations, and according to the studies we're seeing, are failing at it. Yet we have many of these tech companies that are booming, but they're not selling to those end users. They're in essence selling to each other for the majority of times. That doesn't mean they're not selling to end users, but the large meta deals that we're seeing out there, the mega deals we're seeing out there with several billions of dollars, that's just selling between themselves. We haven't seen, companies, like General Motors or, big banks like Bank of America step up and do these multi-billion-dollar deals as of yet. We're going to see probably some of those coming up pretty soon, but we're looking at these large mega deals out there. They're all technology players to technology players. So the core issue is, are AI valuations being artificially inflated through technology to technology company deals that we just talked about? And in many cases, companies are prioritizing intercompany transactions over sales to Global 2000 companies. And the circular financial arrangements or deals creates the illusion of growth, but lack of real substance. In other words, we're not selling to the end users who really should be counting, and those are the real consumers of the technology. In other words, they're doing something other than selling technology. They're building cars or banks or things like that. And they're buying AI as a true force multiplier to the business. We should be focused on that, not these tech-to-tech deals. So the focusing on tech deals, I think, is short-sighted. Certainly, it undermines the market development longer term. I think we're focusing on the wrong areas of the space. Long-term success requires targeting established enterprises for sustainable revenue generation. One of the things when I was a CTO and a CEO, most salespeople used to come to me with these partner deals where it was, kind of a circular deal, much smaller than these, where, we would buy millions of dollars of something from some company and they would buy millions of dollars from us. And I never saw that as a good way to progress because, number one, I don't know if their stuff is any good. I don't know if I want to invest in it. And also, I'm not building the value of the company. All I'm doing is exchanging resources with other companies through this, quid pro quo kind of deal out there. And it didn't make sense to me. I always stopped it, wouldn't pay commissions on it, and kind of feel the same way today. So the emphasis on tech-to-tech deals raises concerns over profitability, market viability. I think we're not seeing the growth that we thought they would see in 2025. And I think that's why they're turning to these kind of options. So it's neglecting broader customer bases, undermines potential for genuine technological advancement. We're not dealing with the end users as we should be. And the interconnected dealings among the tech giants can lead to systemic risk and market collapse at the end of the day. And I think we're going to see a bubble that's inflating now. That's inflating in many cases because of these deals, which has the illusion of innovative growth, but the innovative growth isn't actually there. And when the market figures that out, certainly the retail market, suddenly it corrects and it comes crashing down. And again, I'm not worried about the big companies out there, the tech companies out there who are going to get hurt. I'm talking about people with 401ks. We're going to be collateral damage as the correction in the market around the AI tech space is also going to affect the other stocks in the marketplace. And that's a large concern. So without a shift in focus, the AI sector may face dire consequences as the bubble bursts, and genuine customer engagements, I think, are going to be essential to drive adoption and real value creation. So keep in mind, for true innovation, AI companies must align with Global 2000's needs, not themselves. There's not tech-to-tech transfers. Oracle should not be the main customer of OpenAI, and vice versa. It should be the millions of companies out there that are actually building things in the economy. So the drive for quick gains may divert attention from necessary infrastructure investments. That's my big concern right now. And sustainable growth hinges on creating meaningful solutions for end users. People are going to use the technology, not just fellow tech firms out there. And so let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with that. I've held that belief for a long time, having been CTO of a few publicly traded companies and CEO of a few companies, and had to kind of fight this temptation of these tech-to-tech deals out there in order to seek valuation. And so in many cases, it's tempting. In other words, they're probably not seeing the inflection in the market that they thought they would be seeing at the end of 2025. You got to remember the whole Gen AI revolution, started back in 2022, and everybody's been waiting for the huge inflection point to start to move. The businesses out there only have a certain pile of money, and they're only going to spend a certain portion of that money on AI. So you're going to see growth for sure, and everybody's moving into the AI space, but they're moving so cautiously and taking baby steps, which I think is frustrating the large tech players who are getting many, many billions of dollars of investment cash that's flowing into them, but they're not seeing that cash put to good use in terms of expanding the market because the market is not as mature as I think people thought it was going to be. And so that's what we're dealing with today. So as the AI landscape evolves, the relevance on technology to technology transactions becomes a precarious strategy that risks long-term stability. I absolutely agree with that. I don't like these kind of deals. They never felt right to me when I was in the tech space. I understand I may be naive and I may be missing, some opportunity to massively inflate the stock that I own and then sell it and, make wealth. But however, I think that the role of a technology company is to grow in a sustainable way around research and development and ultimately selling to the end customers, the end users, the people who are going to be leveraging this technology. So the absence of focus on genuine customer engagements, particularly with Global 2000, threatens to undermine the potential of these innovations. So I underscore that the true value creation arises from addressing real-world challenges, advocating for a paradigm shift toward customer-centric strategies. So this is not just advisable, it's an imperative for the sustainability of the sector and the health of the broader economy. So my big concern here, they're not doing any favors, I think, for the growth and trust into the AI technology sector, which is, by the way, beyond, the companies that are up on the diagram that you saw on the screen earlier, that are exchanging resources. There's lots of startups, perfectly capable, great technology. They're not publicly traded, things like that. So they're not participating, in this kind of stuff. However, the growth of the space is areas that they're going to be bundled into. So in other words, if the AI market corrects and, suddenly, people perceive the AI technology players as not necessarily honest players, that's going to hurt everybody, not just the companies that are participating in the circular transactions we talked about. Also, as I mentioned earlier, everybody holds stock on their 401k programs, whether you know it or not. And if there's a correction in the market, you're going to lose some wealth. And it's going to be on paper, until you sell it. But it is going to be something that doesn't help things along. So I think there's going to be a correction anyway, no matter if they did this or not. However, I think this is going to exacerbate the amount of disruption that they're going to see around that correction. And so when we see it, we'll talk about it here. I'll let you know what I think about it. So don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos on this channel. Also check out my InfoWorld Cloud Computing blog, my 100+ LinkedIn Learning courses, and of course my Generative AI Architecture course out on Go Cloud Careers. And finally, my latest book, An Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing. So until next week, stay very, very safe. Later.